Hey, you are listening to the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast.
Opportunities for them are endless. And what they create affects the community. They will make sure we will never forget the good about what all of our cultures share together.
We can't have an industrialized set of standards for students. We need to keep teaching them on their own inquiry level.
From, my teenage years, it became my passion. I need to get back to that school and make it a safe place for kids to learn.
I always want my students to understand both perspectives. Be in the middle. Don't just listen to something and jump to conclusions right away. Do your research, do your homework, and listen.
Here's your host, Josh Rapoon.
Hey everybody, this is the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast series. We're here today with Kui Gapero, who is a middle school teacher at Kamehameha Schools Maui. Today is August 24th, 2019, and it's super exciting to be having this conversation with you. Welcome, Kui.
Hey, mahalo nui.
So, Kui, I want to come out of the gate by talking about your strengths, because you provided me with some information from your website that talks a lot about the work that you do. And you go to some lengths to describe your strengths and even your weaknesses. So I guess two questions. One is, why did you decide to put that sort of front and center for people to know? And then can you talk a little bit about those strengths and about those weaknesses? Yeah.
Well, actually, I really just took that test maybe a couple weeks ago. One of my colleagues, my coworker, she does this exercise with her class, with her students. So she shared with me, and so I took the test, and she's like, "No, I guarantee you're this collaborator, this kind of person." And so I took the test, and it showed me that I like to mediate. I like to be in that person or be in the middle and kind of just connect with both sides, see both sides of the picture. And for me, I think that's important because it's exactly what I do in my class. I always want my students to understand both perspectives. Be in the middle. Don't just listen to something and jump to conclusions right away. Do your research, do your homework, and listen. And, I felt it's necessary for me to share that information, whoever looks at my page, just to kind of put a better picture of who I am personally. Some people might relate. Some people, I put the link there for people to take the quiz themselves, and It's just a topic starter. It's room for discussion.
I actually just recently that's the Clifton test, right? Yeah, I did the Clifton test just recently as well, and it was super interesting to get those results. For you, it's mediator. For me, it was my activator was sort of right in the connecting part, being able to put people together. So it's super interesting. What about your weaknesses? What did it reveal for you?
It's one of the things that jumped out was I was over passionate or overthinking things, and sometimes I am because. I see it when I go home. Something's on my mind. I just want to do it. I want to get it right. I don't stop until I figure out how to do things. So if I'm over passionate about something, it says it's a weakness, and I think I can see it. Sometimes it takes away from me spending time with my family, or I'm stuck on my computer doing lessons and things. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Okay, I gotta stop.
Right.
But luckily I have a supportive family who understands, and I'm doing it because I care, about what I do. So,
so in your classroom now, I bet you've already started to think about thinking of kids in terms of strengths and weaknesses instead of maybe traditional grades or something like that.
Definitely,
I bet you've been thinking about that.
I have, and. This year, we're moving over towards standards-based grading, which I love. I wanted to start last year. I've actually just started during my second semester teaching social studies. And, I've seen the difference between the students because, this is my second year teaching middle school. And I was shocked when my students came in and they're like, how much points is this worth? What is my grade going to be? I was like, who cares? Just do the work. And, I have these conversations with my students, and for me, I'm like, I got to get away from this because that's all they care about. And I know that it might not be coming from them. They might be hearing it from, their family or, looking at colleges in the future, and it's grades. I said, okay, well, you're missing the point. You're missing the learning. So I had to step away. I had to do something different in the classroom. And so this year, we're fully going in with standards-based grading, and slowly introducing the standards to my students, and they're making the connections on their own. What did I do? Is it relevant? I mean, why am I doing this? So I haven't even introduced what points are yet to them. And more so just important in learning the skills and standards. That's all I can check off.
So can you differentiate between, just for our listeners, differentiate between standards-based grading and traditional metrics like tests and things like that? Like you might get people who are saying, well, why is that any different than the content standards, the content information that we've been talking about for more than 100 years? This is what you have to have. So what are the differences there so people understand what you're talking about?
Well, within our school system, we have, certain percentages that we have to, align to with letter grades. And I came from military, and in the military, in the Army, D is a passing grade. And if you pass with a D, going in college and things, you're passing. Like, it doesn't really say that you're reaching those skills, those levels. You got a D, you passed. And I was the same way in college. Took writing electives, that's a requirement in college. I'm like, all I need is a D. I'm telling the teacher, all I need is a D. I don't care about these things, that was stuck in my mind. So coming back into the classroom, I see the same thing. Students only care about the grade and not really about the learning. And that's just from my experience from the students that I teach. It doesn't, paint a picture for everywhere, but with these letter grades, they don't really say much as regards as what they're actually learning as skills and content standards, their strengths, their weaknesses. So with the standards-based grading, I'm saying this student, this person has definitely reached this level, has maybe worked on this level, but is not very strong. This is where they can work on these. And it paints a better picture, at least for the parents.
Right.
And for me as a parent, for my student or for my kids, that's what I want to know. What are they good at? The A's, it doesn't matter for me, at least. I want to know if they're able to read and write. Right. Did you meet the standards? Okay, cool. And for that's the difference between standards-based and letter grades. It paints a better picture of the student's skills, I say.
Right. So in doing my preparation for this moment, one of the things that I picked up is that you are very definitely a teacher, and you're very passionately a teacher. You're also passionately a middle school teacher, which is super interesting. On the other hand, you're also super active in the community, and you've been active for a long time, even going back to Kahoolawe, lots of things that you're doing. So my question is around, what's the relationship between your work in the classroom and your work in the community? And I think partly what we're trying to do for listeners is to help them to understand that they too can have a relationship between their work in the classroom and in the community, but your experience, I think, would be valuable to them.
Well, as a community collaborator, I think it's very important. Our students, especially here in Hawaii, I cannot keep them locked up in the classroom. They have to go home. They interact with the community, might as well get to know the people in their community, and have active lifestyles outside of the classroom. School doesn't only happen in school, and we all know that. Learning happens at home. So if I can engage and introduce these students to a network of people outside of the class or outside of school, it might help them learn or gain some other experiences that are definitely life skills that they might not be able to learn in school. In our school, we don't have home ec. We don't have, cooking or life skill types of classes. Where are they going to get those? At home, maybe. But if I can help at least introduce that network of people that could give them those skills, then I'm happy. Community's happy, probably.
So if an educator is starting to edge closer to that idea of reaching outside the classroom, what's that step that they might take? What is it in your experience? What did you do the first time that sort of helped you to bridge the gap between your class and the community?
Conversations. It's basically my first step. For myself, being involved and knowing the people that do things, having these conversations outside of the classroom about education and bringing students in, that's pretty much how it started.
What's like a specific example in your teaching of somewhere where you had something going on, and then you reached out into the community, and then that relationship started being built, and kids were impacted by that?
Well, I guess, for example, last year, one of our science teachers wanted to do a collaboration project, and I reached out into some, of the scientific community and be like, hey, we have this idea. Let's do something. You want to come in, talk story with the kids, share. And, we just went for it. It was specifically a Hawaiian water unit. So I reached out to this very well-known community member, Uncle Skippy Howe, and he loves working with kids. And so I brought him in. He brought in some hihiwai, some freshwater limpets that the kids got to measure, and we even got to eat a little bit later. But right. That was the best part.
And give me a sense of what was going on in terms of the kids and their learning. What was happening with them during that process?
They were engaged. Because it was relevant to their environment. It was right in their backyard, the streams, the fish, the hihiwai that it came from, right in I'o Stream. They were very familiar with the place. So they're like, oh, wow, this came from this place. They were excited to learn about what is in their backyard. And, just seeing the expressions, the interest in the students, I'm like, why can't I do this all the time? That's it.
Right. Hey, gang, stay with us. After this short break, we're going to come back and talk to Kui about his work at Kamehameha Schools Maui, what gets him excited about going to work each day. And we'll get into the issue of engagement a little bit deeper. Stay with us. We'll be back.
By now, you should be feeling pretty inspired by this podcast and maybe even wondering what steps you might take to become more innovative in your own practice. The Schools of the Future Conference, taking place October 2nd through 4th, is the perfect place to connect with and be inspired by education innovators like the ones featured in this podcast. Now in its 11th year, the conference is innovative by design and is co-produced by the Hawaii Department of Education, the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools, Pillars of Peace at the Hawaii Community Foundation, and the Hawaii Society for Technology and Education. To learn more about the Schools of the Future Conference and to register, visit www.sotfconf.org. Registration will remain open throughout the 3-day conference. Hope to see you there.
What's happening at Kamehameha Schools Maui that gets you pumped?
I think, the flexibility to create my own curriculum and collaborate with other teachers is definitely, driving for me to go to school every day. Every day, on the way to work, I'm thinking, what can we do today? What's out there that we can collaborate with? We have conversations all the time, cross-content conversations. So IDU, these things just kind of pop out. And the flexibility to create our own curriculum, that's it.
Do you feel like this is a shift in school culture at Kamehameha Schools Maui? Was it always that way, or are you guys all together as a faculty generally feeling like the same feeling that you have, that this is a day to create, to develop more collaboration? And
I think it's definitely a shift. I've only been with KS Maui for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was working at the University of Hawaii, Maui College, where I did have the flexibility to do whatever I wanted. I taught Hawaiian Language, Hawaiian Studies, and I could do, what I wanted to do. Before that, I was at Kamehameha Kapalama teaching Hawaiian Language, and we did have a curriculum. We did have things, and there wasn't much collaboration going on, even though it was, asked of us to work with other teachers. It really didn't happen. So KS Maui, my second year there, I'm seeing a different shift. Totally from Kamehameha School system. More cross-content collaborations, talking about standards-based grading, the total shift from what I'm used to.
Right.
Especially going to school at Kamehameha Schools. It's different. It's 100% different. It wasn't really focused on Hawaiian culture, content, and this, at Kamehameha Schools Maui, we're encouraged to have these conversations with our students.
Do Do you get a sense that you're part of what's driving that shift, but you're also following the shift at the same time? Like you're playing more and more of a role in how that shift unfolds?
So I don't want to brag.
Go ahead and brag, man.
But
brag,
cool. when I started work at KS Maui, I have, what am I going to teach? What's my content area? 7th grade social studies, history of the Hawaiian Pacific, and Pacific Island. I was like, do I have to? And so you don't have to. As soon as I got that word, you don't have to, I did whatever I wanted. I thought was relative for the students. So last year, first semester, I did the canned kind of curriculum. Second semester, I started, experimenting and going for there. And the teacher's like, how are you able to do that? I'm like, I'm just doing it. Nobody's scolding me yet. It's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. Right. So this year, I'm all out. I totally changed, the content title. Now I'm calling it OEV Studies. And I'm doing more of a humanities curriculum rather than, the history of Hawaiian Kingdom and, regular things like that. So with that, defining OEV, it's what makes us us. Right. Looking at current events, looking at all these things, encouraging the students to think on their own, design thinking projects, project-based learning, getting the students engaged in their own learning, not me telling them what to learn. My whole philosophy is less me talking, more you talking. And I get that as a language teacher. I want them to have the conversations because I want to know that they're actually using the language. So taking that mentality into social studies, why can't it be the same? I want them to discuss. I want them to talk story. I want them to be interested in their learning, and not me checking off, this is what you learned, and that's it.
I had a similar experience when I was teaching at La Pietra, Hawaii School for Girls. There was a class called Contemporary Issues, and that was the exact question I asked, like, do I have to? And my department chair, she, to her eternal credit, said no. And I blew it up. I just completely blew it up into a course that I called Decision Making 101.
Beautiful.
And we spent an entire semester working on really big, complex issues where the students had to make serious decisions in the context of current issues. So kind of perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you about student engagement. So what's the secret sauce for you of reaching a higher level of student engagement and purpose-driven learning and student voice? Like, how do you get kids pumped up about coming to school? How do you do it as an educator?
Okay.
And how does KS Maui do it as a school?
So for me, I hear it from my students. They love coming to my class. And just a few nights ago, we had our open house, and parents coming in. They're like, "Oh, my kid talks about your class all the time." I'm like, "Well, I don't do anything. It's them talking. It's them having these discussions, and I guess giving them the opportunity to discuss with each other and talk with each other and have these big grown-up discussions. It's amazing. Just the other week, some of my students are like, "Why can't we vote?" And I was like, that's a great question. Write it on the board. Let's answer it.
Right.
And it came out that, what we think matters. So I'm like, beautiful. So let's work with that. So, I encourage them to have the freedom. And I think that's why they like coming to I hope that's why.
So the flexibility that you're building in the classroom, that you're not following a script, is giving them a sense that when they come to class, what's on their minds is important.
Right.
Does it feel like that?
I think so. We have a general topic, in mind, and current events is definitely the big, ease of my curriculum development right now. Things are happening in the community. I can take that and work off of it. It's beautiful. And just having an overall topic and just having these discussions, I think that totally helps with the students because they're interested in it. It's relative for them. They're living it. This is things that they have to live with. And one of the biggest things is these people, above us, the adults who vote, they're making decisions for us.
Right.
So, giving them that encouragement to speak out and have a voice, for my class especially, I think is easy for them to come to. Yeah.
Right. On your website, you write very movingly about your childhood, and I'm kind of connecting it to what we've been talking about engagement, right? Because it feels like sometimes we have to leave our childhood behind when we go to school. So you write very movingly about your childhood and about your parenthood as well. And I'm wondering if you can connect those two. That how does your childhood and your parenthood and your work as a teacher, like what are the relationships between the three, and how do they inform your work as an educator?
Looking at my childhood experiences, definitely had these opportunities to learn outside of the classroom with my father, especially going out into the community, working Hawaiian issues. And my dad, the real old Hawaiian style, he'd look at me, he'd give me just that one look, and I know that I did wrong.
I know that look.
Yeah. I do something, he looks at me, and I'm like, oh, I got to do it again, or do something. And I catch myself oftentimes, doing that to my children. And they know the look of disappointment, but at the same time, it was encouraging when I was a child. And so I definitely try to reinforce that with my children at home. It's like, I'm, proud of you, good job, doing all these reinforcement kind of things, just so that they don't give up. Right. And I think that's what I relate to when I was young, is I was encouraged not to give up and just always go for it and continue doing, because, I knew I was getting there. So when I take that to the classroom, that sticks in my mind. Right. Always encourage, you're doing a good job, and I've took that out like, oh, you're doing bad. I don't like that. You're getting a 0 because you failed to do this. So I'm like, well, what are we going to work on? So I've actually looked at Ann Davies' triangulation of learning, which I'm starting to implement in my classroom, and I find it encouraging. The learning, the observations, the conversations with the student, I think is important. Cool. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, stay with us. We'll be back in just a second. After this short break, we're going to be talking to Kui about the turbulent waters between the 20th and the 21st century. We'll be back shortly.
Within a generation of 25 years, Kamehameha Schools sees a thriving Lahui where our learners achieve post-secondary and educational success. To this end, Kamehameha Schools is proud to share Halau Inana Makapa'akea, an innovation and collaboration space where Native Hawaiian learners converge as a new generation of OEV leaders, innovators, indigipreneurs, and entrepreneurs. The Halau will host and curate various programs, events, and activities that foster OEV leadership development, creative thinking and problem solving, innovation, prototyping, and incubation.
So I've been thinking a lot, Kui, about what I call the two circles. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, you have one circle that is the 20th century, and it's spinning pretty regularly, pretty slowly at about 40 miles an hour clockwise. And then right above it is, and separate from it, is a separate circle, which is the 21st century. Mm-hmm. And today it might be 40 miles an hour, but tomorrow it might be 140 miles an hour. It's what Tom Friedman calls the age of acceleration. Mm-hmm. And it's the area between the two circles. Imagine it as turbulent waters, or imagine it this way, that two canoe are moving towards each other at really rapid rates of speed, and you're going to get out of one and into the other as the other passes by. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. So the waters in between the two circles are filled with people with educators who are swimming from the 20th to the 21st century. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be the 20th and 21st. It could be just from one thing to another, one way of teaching to another way of teaching. But those waters are interesting to me. They're part psychiatric ward, part shark infested, part just absolutely crazy but exhilarating, and all of that. So I'm super interested in your work at KS Maui, but your work juxtaposed against the work of other educators at your school and at other charter and public schools, and what you might be doing to help people get through those turbulent waters to that other side.
Well, I guess it goes back to conversations. Every day, if during recess or if I have a prep period or free time or anything, I actually go visit the other teachers and I talk story. I just, how are you doing? You need help with anything? And that's, for me, it's a starter. And I think with KS Maui, I'm lucky because it's a smaller community. The teachers know each other. We have fun with each other. We have these gatherings. We do all these things outside. And it's easier for me to connect with them. So just by having these conversations, encouraging them, like, hey, why don't you do this? For example, math.
Okay.
Math right now has a Canada curriculum. They're required to do these steps every day. And so I'm like, what are we going to do to tie that into Hawaiian culture-based education? And, unfortunately, we don't have that freedom to design. And I'm like, well, what about, as let's draw a lo'i on the board and, put, how many kaula can we plant? What is the volume of water? Do the math, do all these things. And we can make it relevant. We can. And we could go outside. We have like a little garden outside. I was like, we can do a whole lesson here, planting kalo. We can make grid lines. We can make all of these things. It shapes patterns. Just having those conversations and putting ideas into other teachers' heads for collaboration, I think it's a good start.
But Kui, if you, I can hear people, I can hear our listeners, I can hear what's going on in their brains, right? And what they're saying is, yeah, okay, Kui, that's middle school, but as the kids go into high school, they're on college track. So I don't know if we have time to go outside and measure or do math in the garden. Like, how do you respond when people, voice it that way?
Well, I probably an answer, but why not? For me, having an open mind, it's key. It's key. And trying new things, that's what I encourage from my own kids, my kids. Like, you didn't even try yet. Why not? Just try it. You don't know. It might work. It might not. And at least you tried.
Right.
If you fail, who cares? You failed. You're learning.
Right.
So, for high school, yes, college track, we don't have the time, but I taught high school. So I taught language in high school, and I had that fight, with my department heads. Like, I can't even take my kids outside of the classroom. Why not?
Right.
Language is a living thing. When I taught language, it's like, we got to go outside, we got to experience, we got to see these things for it to be relevant for our keiki. Inside the classroom, sometimes they don't see that bigger picture,
I fought that fight as well about getting outside across history, across Hawaiian studies, across economics and current issues. It felt to me like the secret sauce there was an administrator who backed you. If you were going to take that trip, if you were going to go on that field trip, and I did want to ask you about field trips, by the way, because you talk about that on your site, right?
Right.
So, Kui, what makes for an awesome field trip? And I can hear people saying, "Oh my God, field trip! Field trip is just a fun thing to do one day, but where's the learning in that?"
Right.
What's an awesome field trip?
If it's relevant to what we're learning, obviously. So over the summer, we had many, experiments outside of the classroom. We went up to Watershed where we could tie in all these different learnings. And what was great is the people that we collaborated with were exactly like us. They were my friends. They happened to be my friends. So we could have these conversations. We could have these communications about what the kids are actively learning in school. How can we tie that in to this place of learning? And when they got to go outside, everything tying in together, every little bit, like, I get it now. Seeing it out in the community, seeing how math is applied, outdoors. Because we often hear that, like, when am I ever going to use this?
Yeah.
But when we go outside and use it, I get those, like, oh, okay, Kumu, I get it.
Yeah.
For me, that's a successful field trip. When the student says they get it, they understand it, they see it.
Right.
That works.
I had an example at La Pietra again when I was teaching there. Typical in a U.S. history class, you might come up with the bright idea to put Abraham Lincoln on trial for suspending habeas corpus, during the Civil War. I decided to have him tried in court. So I had a friend who is a circuit court judge. And on a day when he didn't have anything on the docket, our students came down and put Lincoln on trial in front of the judge. And I even had one student tell me that she almost threw up before she went into the courtroom because she was so stressed out about being a prosecutor. But I hear you about the reality of getting outside and seeing what's going on out there. Quick question about learner profiles for our listeners. You talk on your site and in some of your writings about learner profiles, about kupu, about liko, about pua and hua. And also something called a new life term. So what is that? Can you describe that for our listeners?
So those terms came from a rubric, that we're required to do tri-campus at Kamehameha Schools. It's called the AOLA, standards, learner outcomes. So that rubric, the kupu, liko, pua, and hua, it's, sprouting, budding, and flowering, and, fruiting.
Wow, awesome.
And it talks about where they are. So it's back to standards base, and, instead of the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing, it's like, oh, you're growing, you're understanding, you're meeting, you're achieving, And so this new, skill, new life learning, new event kind of thing is, we still have to figure out that term, and for me, I kind of created my own, and I take it from this task mentality that's definitely cultural, and it's called tena. It's a ni'ihau kind of framework of learning, and so it's you're unaccustomed, you're practicing, you're accustomed, and then you're teaching.
Wow.
And you think about it, when we do tasks, you don't know how to do a task, I'll show you. So it's similar to like a we do, you do, or I, the I do, we do, you do kind of thing. So we take that and so I translate it into Hawaiian. Same thing, simple. You're unaccustomed, you're practicing, you're accustomed, you're very comfortable with it, and then you're teaching.
Wow.
And that, I think, encourages the student to be like, okay, well, rate yourself. Where do you think you need more practice? Be honest. And that engages conversations for me. So when we talk about going back to that rubric, the kupu, liko, pua, and hua kind of thing, it's really the same thing. And it's not to put the students down. It's not to give a negative connotation to anything. It's just It's okay. You're learning.
Right.
Let's practice. It doesn't matter if you're failed, not meeting those standards yet. It's just we're learning.
Right.
How to work harder.
Right.
That's all.
Kui, you're a graduate of the Kealaula Institute.
I am.
Can you talk a little bit about what Kealaula is and what you've gained from that experience?
So Kealaula is a program that encourages a different type of thinking and collaboration within the KS network. What it introduced to me is that I can do things, I can create things, I can do things without any fear from backlash or anything. Mm-hmm. So I get the administrator support. I get the support within the school system to be creative and try things out and have a vast network of people that already did it. I can learn from their mistakes, their trials, their errors, their successes, and then we can collaborate cross campus.
Right.
So I was in the third cohort. The fourth cohort is coming up pretty soon, and I'm definitely there to help them out, mentor, instruct, and help share what I know.
That's cool. I know that Kealaula takes you on the road, right? That you guys have gone to California.
We have.
Just so quick side question: what can you name one place that really stood out for you on your journey outside of Hawaii?
It's a Millennium Middle School. I think really definitely stuck out
in California.
In San Francisco.
Got it.
And they were everything that I wanted to do.
Wow.
It came to their advisory program was very well set. They had circle time every single morning. It was student led. They had these things called quests where it's much like design thinking and project based learning, but they let the kids roam the city.
Right.
It's like, here's your quest today. Go down to this store, interview the shop owner, and come back. So teacher stands out on the side of the road, and the kids are just walking down the street, coming back. I'm like, this is amazing. Imagine, could KS do this? I don't think so.
Right. But sounds like you were inspired.
Oh, definitely.
That's very cool. So, Kui, we're at the end of our time, but I want to end each of these podcast episodes with the same question. Because it's the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast series, I want to ask you if you could talk a little bit about what you think school could be. What's your vision around that? And we've already talked about places like Millennium, right, in San Francisco. But what could school be to you?
School could be, anywhere. It doesn't have to be confined. It could be outside in the learning. Why not? Say you're going to Kamehameha Schools, Makai campus, and you go outside into the ocean. That's your school. School can be anywhere here in Hawaii. It doesn't have to be behind doors.
So we have something very unique here, which is place and culture, and maybe even more unique than anywhere else in the country or maybe even in the world. And you're one of the people who's leading us forward into that. Thank you very much, Kui. This has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Find the What School Could Be in Hawaii podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Spotify, and Stitcher, as well as at mltsinhawaii.com. Join the ongoing conversation across social media. Look for Most Likely to Succeed in Hawaii on Facebook, at MLTS in Hawaii on Instagram, and at MLTS in Hawaii on Twitter. Tag your posts with hashtag what school could be, hashtag deeper learning, hashtag EdChat, and hashtag education. Our next interviews will be recorded on Saturday, September 28th. You can join us in the studio through the magic of Facebook Live. Find us at the Most Likely to Succeed in Hawaii Facebook page. We want to hear from you. Send your comments, questions, and feedback to mltsinhawaii@gmail.com. If you love this podcast series, we would really appreciate a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to help us reach a wider audience of innovative educators. And please, feel free to share this series with colleagues, friends, and family. Your host is Josh Rapoon. Our technical producer is Ryan Ozawa. Post-production is by Hawk Media Productions, the digital media program at Kealakahe Intermediate School. Editors for this episode are AJ Rosario and me, May Kanata, under the guidance of Matthew Williams. Learn more at hawkmediaproductions.com. And special thanks to Ted Dintersmith, author and education change agent. Class dismissed.